The Expendables 3. So now we have 3 movies with Stallone and the old crew getting together and kicking some ass once again. But I have to say that this movie is the most different from the Expendables trilogy. The first 2 movies I can watch back to back and they kind of feel like a natural progression. The first 2 movies are very similar in tone and overall feeling. As in, you know, the only big difference is there's a bit of a darker tone in the first movie, which I enjoyed, and then the second movie is a little bit more lighthearted, with more humor, which I also enjoyed. Now, other than that, they're pretty much the same thing. They're about 90 minutes long, action movies, you know, older action stars getting together, here's the main villain, go out and kill them, bunch of action. That's kind of, you know, the plot for the first 2 movies. The third movie, though, there's a lot of different things here. One of them being, that I noticed right away, is that a lot of the movie is filmed with bluish hues. Like, just all of a sudden there's a bunch of blue lights everywhere. Or just bluish, you know, a lot of the settings were just blue. Blue sunglasses on Stallone. It's just bluish sunglasses. It's just, I noticed that there was a different color here, and that gives you a different feeling for the movie as well. Another thing is that there's a different director. Now, I don't know if that really changed it, but that can change certain series. But I say this because the first 2 movies, the first one was Sylvester Stallone, the second movie was another director, and the third movie is once again another director. But Stallone and the second movie director, they were very similar in style. So that's why I'm saying that it might not be the third director's fault that it's different, but he might be as well. And it's PG-13. So the first 2 movies were rated R. There's a little bit more violent, but there's more violence, there's more gore, there's more CGI blood. CGI blood I don't necessarily miss. I wish sometimes there would have been some, but it kind of looked a little bit too fake in the first movie, so that was one of my complaints originally. But it doesn't feel as intense. It doesn't feel as serious necessarily in the third movie here, because of the PG-13 slapped on. And the biggest difference, in my opinion, is the storyline. The first 2 movies, like I said, they were 90 minutes, very straightforward. Here's the villain, go and take him out. Third movie completely changes that up. Not only is it longer, but the second half of the movie is kind of completely different. And I say this because at the beginning of the movie, in the first act, it feels like the regular Expendables movies for the most part, and you find out that Mel Gibson is the main villain, who does a fantastic job. I'm so glad that he's taking on the roles of the villain, because we've never really seen him do this, other than last year when he first did it in Machete Kills, and he saved that movie. That movie was going to be horrible, and he kind of brought it to an acceptable pace because he was such a good villain in that. And he just seems like he's having fun doing something different, going against the grain of what he's always done as being the hero, and he just plays it so well. He plays the douchebag, arrogant douchebag that's a billionaire arms dealer. He did such a good job with it. And you can kind of tell that he was having a little bit of fun, which is what these movies are about. And so anyway, Mel Gibson's character is one of the co-founders, co-creators of the Expendables with Stallone. So they were the first 2 that created it. And what I liked about this is that you learned a little bit more about the Expendables before pre-Expendables 1. So that was interesting, and because that all of the Expendables that are there, they haven't been around from the beginning. So they did meet up with Wesley Snipes, another new addition to the Expendables movies, who used to be part of the original crew, Kelsey Grammer as well, and Schwarzenegger. They all kind of know about Mel Gibson, and they all talk about like their past, and I like that about it. But then all of a sudden, as soon as he finds out that it's Mel Gibson as this main villain, he doesn't want to use his crew that he's had since the beginning, or since Expendables 1, to take out Mel Gibson. He wants to take him out, but he wants to do it with a new crew, fresh faces, because he feels too much for his old crew. Like, he doesn't want to lose any of them. And that right there is just like, okay, you could maybe salvage this, but they ended up picking a bunch of newer actors and actresses that really haven't earned their right as action stars. They're horrible. They take down the movies to such a peg, you're just like, all I care about is Stallone right now. Where is the old crew? And this is for the entire second half of the movie. What I did like, though, I will say this, I did like Kelsey Grammer and Stallone working together and finding the new crew. I liked seeing them conversing, talking about the Expendables, talking about Mel Gibson, talking about just each other. Yeah, I like that part about it. I generally like when you find other characters, but I didn't care. I did not care for the reasons that they would show their feats of strength, with why they should get these new characters. I didn't care. I did not care for them. They could have, saved a baby in a burning down house, and I still wouldn't have cared. They're bland. They're very bland. That is a huge negative. Another negative to some people, not everyone, is Antonio Banderas. Now, Antonio Banderas at least is an actor that we know, and he deserves the right of being in any Expendables movies. But they went with a very strange humor with him, where sometimes it just goes a little bit too much. And some people just hate him right off the bat for everything that he does in this movie, but he's kind of like a Jar Jar Binks type of character. I didn't find him that annoying. Sometimes I was like, okay, that's kind of funny, but then he goes a little bit too far, and I think that if they just would have contained him a little bit more, it would have been a better fit. But I will say that one of the biggest positives is that there's so many new faces. The first two movies, you know, it's kind of like the same ones, except Bruce Willis and Schwarzenegger got bigger roles in the second movie. This one, we have Wesley Snipes, who I didn't really like at the beginning because he was too cocky, but then he just added up with the humor, and I loved his character. We have Mel Gibson as the main villain, the best villain. I'm thinking of Mel Gibson, his name together. Anyway, the best villain that we've had so far in the Expendables movies. He just played it so well. Harrison Ford takes over the role of Church, who was played by Bruce Willis, because Bruce Willis wanted $4 million for 4 days of work instead of $3 million. Yeah, he wanted that extra $1 million for that one greedy son of a bitch. Anyway, Harrison Ford does an amazing job, and I'm so glad that he was in this movie. And Antonio Banderas, as I said, but he's, you know, like positive and negative. It's just, that is the saving grace of this movie, though, is having Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson in this movie, along with Schwarzenegger and Stallone, because they are the four main action heroes that I think of. When I think of action stars, those are the four main ones. And then you go from one scene for Stallone and Schwarzenegger, okay, then we have a scene with Harrison Ford, then we have a scene with Mel Gibson. You keep getting treated by seeing all these big names together, and I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And the third act of this movie does redeem itself. Second act is just, the new crew just sucks. I could not stand them. Another thing too is that they have, in the second movie they had a Jet Li treatment. So they had Jet Li only in the movie for like 5 or 10 minutes. He was barely in the second movie. And then they do that to two of the old crew from the original Expendables team in this third movie. I'm like, not only are they not in the movie a lot because the new crew's there, but then they take out two of them almost completely and they're barely cameos. It's frustrating because that's the appeal of the Expendables. But the third act was pretty darn good. And just seeing all the, you know, the older actors together like Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson was a treat. New actors were definitely the negative. So I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. It barely makes the 7. Like, thank goodness Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson were in this movie to bring it up to that notch. Because without them, oh my God. That new crew, just get rid of them. I hated them. So anyway, thank you all for watching. You've been bearded in. Beardage.